Hello, thank you for listening to A Glimpse of the Kingdom. I am David Pendergrass. That little bit of a tune that you heard there was actually myself and three other guys. I started a quartet when I was in undergraduate days, and we traveled around and recorded several albums, and I wrote that song there, and it was a fun tune. And since I don't have to pay copyright on that, you get to hear the same tune over and over. You know, I was listening to something from Sam Harris. Sam Harris was a Christian, and now he's not. He's a well-known atheist now. I don't know what he calls himself, agnostic atheist. I care, but I don't care that much. Anyway, he's written several books and one a letter to a Christian nation and so forth. And he's really well known as a atheist skeptic out there. And I was listening to his podcast with another guy, another atheist guy, and they were talking about science and faith. And I just, again, got so frustrated. And I was going to spend just a few minutes not necessarily responding to something they said in particular, but something more in general. I want to say just a little bit about how Christians in a Christian worldview understand the role of science. There's a long discussion. It's an old debate back in the 1920s and 30s probably. They first started saying things like science and religion don't mess with each other, so it's okay. And then a Harvard evolutionary theorist named Stephen Jay Gould, he said they were non-overlapping magisterium. That is to say, science and religion don't intersect, so they're cool to be left alone that way. And for a lot of people like that theory, but most atheists hate that theory. They hate it. Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, the guy he was interviewing on his podcast, they think it's just profoundly stupid. Sam Harris even said that he doesn't know how Stephen Jay Gould could have thought such a thing, because any thoughtful or rational person would dismiss it within 90 seconds of hearing it. Well, that's a long topic, but I don't want to talk so much about the specifics about what he said, though I find his view very mistaken and ill-informed. I want to say something else just in broad term, and perhaps if you've not been exposed to this before, I want to introduce you to this concept and give you just a big overview, so that when you hear people like Sam Harris because he shows up on CNN and whatever, they're all over the place, and they show up a new book, a new thing, giving some kind of commentary. Look, here's the deal. Science tells us how the universe works. That's it in a nutshell. Science is an attempt to tell us how the universe works, which means essentially science is about discovering cause and effect. That's really all it does, and it's wonderful and it's good, and yay, I love science. But science has its chief methodology's end goal is to connect the dots between every cause and effect. Imagine the old school domino picture when you knock over one domino, knocks over the next domino, knocks over the next domino, and it goes on and on and on. The goal in science is to figure out every single cause and effect. So if you see some effect, I'm looking out the window right now, and it's a beautiful day, multicolored leaves on the tree. The leaves are moving. That's an effect. Now, because light hit the leaves, the light reflected off of that and came and hit my eyeball and so forth, but beyond that point, I'm looking at this effect and wondering, what's the cause of that? Why are these leaves moving? Now, I quickly deduce that it's wind, because I know something about how wind works and that wind exists, and I might hear it through the screens, and I would deduce that's wind that's blowing through it and so forth. Now, we all do this all the time. My children have done it since they were old enough to understand anything. So cause and effect is a chief understanding of science. That's what it's all about. And that's good, and that's okay. But here's the deal. Here's the big deal. What you posit, that is, what you suggest for the cause, is determined by a philosophical view, a view about reality. I'll say that one more time, because this is where the rubber meets the road. This is the line in the sand. What you posit or what you suggest as a cause depends on your philosophical view, or we'll call that a worldview. So, here are the two major views that we talk the most in the Western world. Most scientists believe in a philosophical worldview called naturalism. Naturalism. They might call it different things, but basically that's it. Naturalism. A naturalist is a person who believes that all that exists, you might say reality, is only matter and energy, and matter and energy itself are interchangeable. But it comes down to matter and energy. Everything, including my thoughts, including your brain, this cosmos, stardust, everything is made essentially of matter and energy. And then string theorists think it's made of even smaller things called strings of energy that vibrate. But scientists are always trying to discover the smallest building blocks of the universe and say, see, right there, essentially, it's all made of blank, of X. And that's what naturalism is. Everything that exists is matter and energy. Now, here's the point. That means the cause of every single effect ever that has ever happened in the universe, that ever will happen in the universe, has a prior natural cause that is governed by a law of nature. Now, for a long time, people didn't think they thought laws were just descriptive, and many scientists still think they're descriptive. But the last century, or maybe almost 200 years, it's taken on a prescriptive role. That is, laws are bedrock laws that cannot be broken, violated, bent, ever, ever, ever. Well, if you're a naturalist, that's what you must believe. That the universe is governed by hardcore, impenetrable laws, and every single cause is some effect of some other cause, which is an effect of some other cause, like the dominoes. Every domino is a natural domino. So, if I see those leaves blowing and I say it must be wind, wind is, of course, a natural cause. And then before that wind would have been heat, right? Maybe the Earth's temperature rose, and that created heat waves of molecules, and molecules is a natural cause to the movement. And then before that was heat, the effect of the heat, the cause of the effect of the heat, the cause was the sun. The sun shot its rays and took about 8 minutes to get here. And that's an effect from another cause, which is the nuclear fission inside of a sun. And you see it goes backwards. The dominoes can go backward, back. And every single thing in this series has what we might call a natural or naturalistic explanation. Okay, that's the worldview. Now remember, in the realm of science, if you are a naturalist, when you're trying to figure out how come, why does it do that? Where do black holes come from? What is gravity? What is light? They will always assume there must be a naturalistic cause, and they're not going to give up till they find it. Now, in supernaturalism, or metaphysics, it's very similar but a little different. In supernaturalism worldview, there is the universe. That is a part of reality, where naturalists say the universe is reality. That's it. A supernaturalist says the universe is part of reality, and there's something beyond it. By another analogy, a naturalist would say the water and the pool is all that exists. The water is everything. A supernaturalist would say, no, the water is a pool, part of a grander backyard. And there's a thing called land, and there's different reality out there. The point being, if you use the scientific method and you're still looking for causes and a cause and effect nexus, if you're a supernaturalist, it means sometimes the cause will be something beyond nature. Say that one more time. If you have the worldview of supernaturalism, it means that you are at least open to the idea that some causes are beyond or outside of the cause and effect nexus of nature itself. So, since most scientists are naturalists, that means all that exists is matter and energy, and that's it. There can be no causes outside of nature. They get very, very ticked off when you posit something beyond nature. That's why Richard Dawkins gets so angry all the time in interviews and his books and his debates. It ticks him off. And he's not alone. This is the common atheistic, naturalistic view. They get ticked off. Dawkins particularly calls people lazy and stupid. They're just lazy. They just give up. God did it. Well, isn't that lazy? I can't do a British accent, so I won't try. It makes them very angry. Now, it makes them angry. Remember, from his point of view, it makes sense. It makes a person very angry because he's waiting to find out what the naturalistic cause is. And if you say God did it, or if it was some other non-natural cause, it makes him angry because it's like you've given up trying to find a natural cause. That's also why Dawkins and other people like him demand to know who or what caused God. In Richard Dawkins' big book called The God Delusion, and about the middle of his book, he has a little summary. He said, this is the central argument of my book. If you say God caused the universe, then what caused God? And Dawkins in interviews has made that very clear. What he means is there must be some scientific explanation for God. Now, the reason why you would say something so nonsensical is only if you believe all that exists is the universe. Well, if that's the case for Dawkins and others, they think then God must be a creature like a big fat Superman creature who lives in space somewhere, and he must have been born on some planet or born from some black hole or something, because there must be a naturalistic cause for everything. Now, why is that? What Dawkins is going to say, what all atheist or naturalistic scientists say is, it's because we're doing science. But that's what I'm trying to help you in this podcast. They're not just doing science. They're doing science within a worldview. Science does not mean that there are no supernatural causes. Science seeks to figure out what the cause and effect nexus, the connection, cause and effect, cause and effect. That's all science is trying to figure out. If you're a naturalist, you are limited. You are forced to believe that the cause must be something in nature. If you are a supernaturalist, you are not limited. You are not forced to say that every cause must be something in nature. You're open to it might be something outside of it. It might be something outside of it. Doesn't mean it is. So, how do we tell what the cause is? You might say, why believe in supernaturalism? Well, I wrote about this pretty extensively in my book, and I hope you'll read it. And so I'm not going to go through all the details. That would take a long podcast. But let me say just a couple things. Number one, I am a supernaturalist. In the Christian worldview, I'm a supernaturalist. I'm not a supernaturalist because I'm a Christian. I think Christianity is very compelling within a supernatural worldview. That is to say, I don't think that all that exists is matter and energy. I think the majority of causes in reality are natural. I think the majority of causes in the universe are natural. When I see the leaves outside moving, I don't think an angel is flickering the leaf. I don't think God is blowing on it. I don't think there are magical leprechauns I cannot see that are pushing the leaves. I will immediately look for a natural cause. I go about my life all the time assuming almost every single thing that happens was caused by something else inside of nature that was basically following natural laws. I'm absolutely okay with that. And most thoughtful Christians would concur with me. This is the standard Christian view, that in general, you look for natural causes. In fact, this fits well in the Christian worldview because we think God created the universe and allows it to run based on laws of nature. Now, in a Christian worldview, we believe he not only rigged the game, as it were, but he also sustains it. That the reason why there are laws at all that exist at all is because he makes sure it is sustained, that laws still exist. If you're a naturalist, there's no explanation whatsoever for laws. There's no explanation. If you're a supernaturalist, there is an explanation. God sustains it. He sustains creation itself. So the first thing I'd say is, I'm a supernaturalist. Second, I'd say is, the majority of all causes are naturalistic. And we should look for that first. And yet, when everything we know about nature can't explain the cause, we posit something beyond nature. When everything we know about nature can't explain the cause, we posit something beyond nature. Imagine you and I are fish in an aquarium. And we know everything there is to know about the aquarium and the water in it and the movement of the currents inside the aquarium and so forth. And every once in a while, this stuff trickles to the top. And we'll call it food. And we are positing where this food comes from. Now, you're a naturalist fish. You think all that exists is within the aquarium. So what you're going to say is either A, I think it is random atoms and molecules forming through a black matter and dark matter and energy at the top, and then it just so happens that we can consume it. You might say it just randomly mysterious does it. And what you might say, I don't know yet, but give it time. Don't be stupid. Don't be stupid and lazy and just start, well, it must be some other person. No, give it time. Eventually, the fish scientists are going to figure it out. We're going to figure out exactly where that stuff comes from that we call food. Or thirdly, you're going to posit and say, we don't know and we'll never know. It's just beyond the grasp of the human mind. And then I ask this question, is it possible that stuff we call food did not originate in the aquarium or from the aquarium? Is it possible that the cause of that effect, the origin of the food, is not aquariumite from an aquarium? And you say, no, it can't be. And I'll say, why can't it be? And you say, because we all know all that exists in the aquarium. And I want to say, no, we don't all know that. Why do you think all that exists in the aquarium? And you're going to say, it just does. It just does. I'm a naturalist. My point is, what if it's possible if every single thing we know about the aquarium suggests that random food like that doesn't just show up? Well, it's kind of like that, of course, when it comes to my own reality. I'm not a fish anymore. For example, consciousness. Consciousness certainly is real. Certainly it is. I know this is debated. I've read a lot of literature on this. If by chance you're a skeptic, atheist, or even a Christian and think you're just a brain, there is no you, by the way, that your brain is listening right now. Not your brain, rather, the brain in your skull is listening. I hear you, but I completely disagree. And all the reading I've demonstrates to me, and based on my just firsthand experience, consciousness is real, and it cannot be natural. There are brain states that I have that are natural. The chemicals in my brain, serotonin and so forth, can affect the way I think about things. It can affect my personality type. Yes, it can. Yes, it can. But my consciousness is not the same thing as a brain state. They're related, but they're not the same. And remember, if my consciousness is merely the result of natural process, it means I have no reason to trust that my thoughts are true. Instead, all I have to do is trust that every thought I have is made for survival because it works. Well, look, I can believe in false things that work. Completely false, but they work. That doesn't mean they're true at all. And evolution only should lead to survival thoughts, not necessarily true thoughts. So there's no reason to trust for a second. And there's a lot of literature on this. You can go read Alvin Plantinga. You can read Alvin Plantinga's book, Science and Religion, Where the Conflict Really Lies. It's awesome. And J.P. Moreland has a great book on the soul. J.P. Moreland, it's a great book. So you need to read a lot on this. The fact is, consciousness is an example of something that nature cannot explain. It cannot, it will not ever be able to explain because it's a different kind of thing. It's a category error. Another thing that I'm going to say about this is, around the world, throughout history, Christians have claimed there are things called miracles that occur. Miracles, C.S. Lewis is right here. C.S. Lewis said miracles are not violations of the laws of nature. A miracle is when the cause of the effect did not come from nature. When the cause of the effect did not come from nature. Back to my fish and aquarium analogy. If I said, if you're the skeptic, just pretending for a second, you're the skeptical fish. Well, where did that food come from? And I say, I don't know, but I do know this. It didn't come from the aquarium. The cause must have been something outside of the aquarium. And in fact, I want to make up a word for when the cause cannot be something inside of reality that we know in the universe. I'll call that word miracle. I'll call that event a miracle. That is the Christian definition of miracle in the New Testament. That a miracle is when a cause, something occurs, where the cause is God or something of the divine realm. Might be an angel, but it's something in the divine realm. It's nothing in nature. It's something outside of nature. That's the definition of miracle. So it doesn't violate the laws of nature. It's just that the cause is outside of nature. But listen, once it occurs in nature, science can take over for cause and effect. Laws of nature take over immediately. C.S. Lewis is exactly right about that. If Jesus, and I think he did, really created wine out of nowhere, as soon as he did, I mean, the Planck time, immediately when he did, gravity, oxidation, heat, everything took over and started manipulating the molecules of the wine he created. When he created fish and bread and multiplied it, immediately the fish started decaying because it's an earth. It wasn't supernatural fish that no longer could decay. Had they let all that fish out there, it would have rotted. The bread would have rotted too. It had gone all awful had they left it out there because the laws of nature, as it were, would have done its thing. So when we find things that occur in reality, which Christians have been saying for a long, long time, that science cannot ever explain, we call that a miracle. Now, here's the deal. Many Christians think things that are unexplainable are miracles that, in my view, They just jump the gun too much. They just, boy, that's a miracle. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. For example, a common expression is when babies are born. Oh, it's just a miracle, isn't it? It's just a miracle when baby. Well, that's not a miracle at all. What they mean is it's special, and that's fine. But philosophically speaking, I wish people would stop saying that because it's not a miracle. God is not the cause of pregnancy. And if a person really thinks that, we've got to please educate them so they don't have 100 kids, because that's not where babies come from. They're not dropped from heaven. They're not coming from storks. Now, Jesus, yes, the cause of Jesus' birth was a miracle, technically, yes. And he's the only one that was a miracle. A lot of things happen. We're just not sure. Sometimes the body is really incredible, and it might have a big healing all of a sudden, or a wound just decides to heal, or the cancer goes through remission on its own. And sometimes it's safer to say we're ignorant, the body's incredible, it's special, and we don't want to call it a miracle just yet, because that's a big word. You're saying that the cause is God. But there are some things that we know for a fact that goes against everything we know about science. I mean, it is counter. For example, the dead coming back to life. There's a book by Craig Keener, who's a great New Testament scholar. He wrote a book called Miracles. He wrote a 4-volume work on Acts, a 4-volume commentary on the book of Acts. And he started to write a footnote about miracles, and that turned into about 200 pages. And then he asked the publisher, can I just turn this into a book? And he turned that to a 2-volume book. This dude can write. He's also given presentations on YouTube. Craig Keener. Craig, C-R-A-I-G, Keener, K-E-E-N-E-R. And do Craig Keener miracles, and you'll listen to him. And you'll know you find him because he talks like this. He's very soft. You have to turn per volume. And he's the junk. He's awesome. And in book Miracles, he talks about this. He interviews people and records so many miracles. I just started skipping all the pages. I got bored. It must be thousands of miracles he recounts in this thing. And what's striking to me is atheists in debates often say, if God were real, you'd hear about miracles these days. You don't hear it at all. I mean, it's nowhere. We don't hear it. That's just completely false. They've not done any research whatsoever in the world. Keener did research and found that just in charismatic and Pentecostal circles around the world, and only a few countries, just in those denominations, they recorded up to 10 million people have recorded who have firsthand experience of a miracle in the last few decades. So we have overwhelming evidence. And one example, he tells tons of examples of people who were dead. Some kids were dead. They were on their way to the burial in the bag when they started moving around. Days after declared dead. People have died on hospital beds. And that's not just in Africa, though that happens all over. It does happen all over Africa and China and so forth. But in the U.S., there's tons of documented stories of people in the hospital bed. They're brain dead. There's stories of people who've died for so long that their extremities had turned black and they come back to life. Now, science is certain about this fact. When you die, you're dead. There is no naturalistic cause to explain why you would come back to life. And I could go into a long list of things. Why is it when people who die and come back to life almost always tell stories about what they experienced? Conscious experiences. People who come back and they say, oh, I was aware of everything you did. You talked about going on vacation and you went to golf and this and that. And one person I read about, they woke in a different book. He woke up and he saw the people in the circle praying for him because they had died. Now, these people were brain dead and their heart had stopped for like 45 minutes more. I mean, on and on the story. There's a book you need to read called Evidence of the Afterlife. Evidence of the Afterlife. If you don't believe in these stories it's not like you see a white light and you come back and you go, oh, it's just no. Read Evidence of the Afterlife and it will change your mind. If you're open-minded at all, you will read that book and it will change your life. You will say there is no conceivable, ever, not just today, but ever, there will never be a naturalistic explanation for these stories. Okay, that's what a miracle is. A miracle is when the cause is not something in nature. But one more time, let me wrap up where I started and I'm done. Science explores cause and effect. If you are a naturalist, which almost every atheist is, if you're a naturalist, the cause always must be something in nature. If you're a supernaturalist, the cause can be something outside of nature, but typically it's not. At least in the Christian worldview, because we think miracles are very, very rare indeed. And that's it. So you can be a scientist and be a naturalist and a supernaturalist. It just means sometimes, depending on your worldview, you might have a different cause. And so if you hear people like Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins get so angry at you or angry at people because I can't believe you'd say that, you're just so stupid and lazy and God of the gaps, God, you don't know how it happened, blame God. Remember, it's because they're naturalist. A naturalist cannot stand the idea of a supernatural cause. Makes them angry. If you say there is a supernatural cause, they will say you're not doing science. You're not doing science. And that is precisely why Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, and all kinds of atheists will say that charge against Christians. And when you come back and say, well, Francis Collins, he's a devout Christian and a scientist, they'll say he just compartmentalizes. In one area of his life, the Christian side, he's just delusional or stupid. But in a scientific world, good for him. That's why atheists are adamant that science and religion don't mix, because they think science is really science plus naturalism. It's looking for cause and effects as long as the cause and effects are all natural. So say one more time, the reason why they think Christians can't do science or science is against religion, against Christianity, is because for them, technically speaking, what they really mean is they believe in scientific method plus naturalism. And the whole point of this podcast is to let you know the reason why atheists think that way and to say also they're wrong, they're mistaken. Science is not naturalism. Science is just a methodology that both naturalists and supernaturalists can use. It just means we're going to have different explanations for the cause. And that's very important to understand. So while we are accused of not doing science, quote unquote, not doing science, what they really mean is we're not doing science within the worldview of naturalism. And that's the accusation, and that's where they're mistaken. We can do science and come to different causations if we need to, but typically we come to the same cause, a naturalistic cause. So keep doing science. Keep looking for causes. God bless you. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to A Glimpse of the Kingdom. If you want to listen to more, go to my website, davidpendergrass.com, and look at one of the tabs that says podcast. If you click that, it'll take you straight to my podcast on iTunes, or you can search for it on iTunes if you want to, A Glimpse of the Kingdom. But also on my website, you'll see another way to get, if you're an Android listener on your phone or you just don't use Mac computers. Again, davidpendergrass.com, and click podcast. It'll take you exactly where you need to go, and you can subscribe from there and get this as often as you like, and also see my blogs and so forth. If you want to get me to come to your organization or church, otherwise to do some consulting, you need to go to davidpendergrassconsulting.com. davidpendergrassconsulting.com. You'll see the information there. If you want to reach out to me on Twitter, you can find me at Dr. D. Pendergrass, at Dr. D. Pendergrass.